Hello. Before I get started with this video, I want to just give you a warning. This video is going to involve personal matters, it's going to involve some religious matters, possibly some abnormal psychology, and a lot of this stuff I'm not exactly sure exactly what happened, so it is my experience, my interpretation of these events. This might not be your interpretation. If you're, and this will also involve things like the occult, spiritualism, things of those nature, hauntings, supernatural events, in quotes or whatever. If you're not into that sort of thing, I suggest not watching the video if that's going to offend you. I've really debated about doing this video for a while and whether or not I should do it. I might even delete it after I post it up, I'm not sure. But if nothing else, this will give you some sort of insight into me and maybe why I have some of the creative insight into running RPGs, because I've had some really creepy things happen in my life. So, if you want to listen, continue to let this play. Otherwise, I suggest turning it off. I've debated about how I want to approach this subject, where to start, where to finish, and I came up with a couple of different ideas, but right now I don't have an outline, I don't have a layout, and I'm just going to talk. For a long time, me and my brother were very close. We lived in the same room, we shared the same bunk beds, we spent almost every hour of the day with each other. He's 2 years younger than me. I'm the oldest, and he's the middle child. And I have another sibling, a younger sister. But to say that we were close growing up would be an understatement. We did everything together, G.I. Joes and Legos and Constructs and all kinds of those 80s toys, He-Man and so forth. And we'd have all these dramas, all these, well, I guess not dramas, but, we would role play before I even know that's what that was, just kids playing with toys. And we do lots of activities outside, riding our bikes, going through the woods, doing all sorts of things together. So we were very close. When we got older, he took an interest in things that I wouldn't recommend taking an interest in. But again, that's just my opinion. He started to collect all kinds of books on the occult, spiritualism, magical traditions, anything that he could get his hands on. And from my perspective, that's where the trouble began. So my brother began to dabble in these things and experiment. He would do this by himself. He didn't have anyone helping him. He didn't learn from anyone. He basically took everything that he could accumulate, and he tried it all. A little bit of this, a little bit of that, in some sort of occult blender, I guess, if you want to put it that way. He started to change. The brother that I knew so closely, so intimately over the years, didn't really seem to be there anymore. People change, they get involved in different things, and, that was part of it, but there were other things as well. He would know things that he had no way of knowing, as far as I could tell. He would know secrets that I had never revealed to him. He would speak sometimes in different voices and really seem to have a different manner about him. Sometimes he would speak in multiple voices at the same time. I didn't even know that was possible. And whenever it would happen, I would feel the hairs on the back of my neck rise. And I just felt that there was something else there. It wasn't him. It was something else. At times he would involuntarily move his limbs. He would throw himself down. He would hurt himself. He would scrawl things on the walls with marker and pen. He basically took over my old room whenever I moved out and went to college. And I think in my absence, things got a lot worse. He delved more heartily into these things. A lot of his friends started to neglect him, started to not be around him because he would tell them things that would severely disturb them. He would do things that would make them want to kick him out of their apartment or house. He was also always known to be, kind of like me at times, where I would do crazy things. I would say things that are funny, but all in good humor. And at some point that changed, where he wasn't the same. He wasn't like the zany fun guy, the class clown kind of thing. He was more of the creepy guy that nobody wants to have at their place, or nobody's girlfriend wants them to be around them. And when I'm trying to talk about this, I'm trying to figure out how to squeeze it all in, how to really get to the core issues and what really frightened me. There were times when he would call me at 3 in the morning, 4 in the morning, 2 in the morning, talking about how he's going to kill himself and the ways he's going to kill himself. I almost got fired from my job at UPS at the time because I left work several times to prevent him from killing himself or to help him. Now, when I talk about helping him, there were things that I did over the years that he had this problem that would quote-unquote fix him for a time. Things that once done, he would be himself again. He would be normal for months, sometimes even up to 6 months. And inevitably, every single time, he would clean out his library. He'd get rid of all the books that he was into. And for a while, he'd be fine. And it kind of reminded me of someone being addicted to a drug or alcohol, where he'd be clean for a while, and then he would see a book in a store, and he'd pick it up. He just felt like a compulsion to pick it up. And he'd start practicing and doing things again. And in some sense, I was an enabler looking back at it, because I was always there to help him, to fix him, to clean him, cleanse him out of the things that I thought were inside of him. And I was no one. I was just his brother. I was the only one that wanted to help him. And a lot of things in life come down to, if no one else will, you have to. And this was one of those situations. We had gone to multiple churches to ask for help. A lot of them just straight up just didn't believe that he had anything spiritual going on with him, even if we talked about things that he was into. It was kind of disheartening. There were a couple pastors that would pray over him, talk to him, or help me just be there, have some sort of witness when I was saying things and doing certain, I guess you might call them rituals or ritual phrases. Things that I had just gleaned from reading the Bible itself. Again, I'm no expert. I've taken a few psychology classes in college, but that was about it. But at the time, it was just, I was the older brother, and no one wanted to help him. So I did. And it really affected me. The things that I saw him do, the things like hurting himself, and the things I saw him write, and just hearing the things he said really just got under my skin. The only way I can talk about it really, or describe it, is spiritual scars. I literally feel like my soul has scars on it. If that is any sort of idea as far as how that works, or I don't know, makes sense. It was frightening. Downright terror almost doesn't even describe it. The only way I believe that I got through that is the faith that I did have. The things that he was saying, a lot of them I have blocked from my memory. I really don't remember a lot of the actual phrases and words that were said. Just the sound of the voices that came from him still to this day give me horrible nightmares where I will wake up and be praying. Like I will pray myself awake. My wife sometimes will have to wake me up and say you're having one of your dreams again. And they kind of scare her. But she's never had any problems, with my kind of dreams. She has like bad people dreams where, bad people do things to her, try to kill her, those sorts of things. My nightmares are normally all supernatural in nature. But thankfully over the years they've lessened. This is what this is what I'm trying to talk about. I'm so scatterbrained on this, I don't even know where to start. So like I said, the pattern was over the years, because this spanned years, and every time I tried to help him, it was terrible and frightening, and every time was unique. The things he said did not sound like they were coming from him. They sounded like they were coming from someone inhabiting him or living in him. I mean, there's a reason that I like a lot of the exorcism movies, like Exorcism of Emily Rose and The Exorcism and things like that. But my response to them is not really with terror, as other people might, but of sadness, because they, in some ways, not all of them, but in some ways resembled a lot of the things I went through. And I'm not a pastor, I'm not a priest, I'm just someone that I would consider a non-denominational Christian. I go to different places and don't always go to church, but I do believe. So this is in no way trying to offend anyone. This is just trying to be a personal revelation about what happened. So I would pray out loud. I would lay hands on his head. When I was with the pastors, I'd have them pray while I did things. But these were always done with my brother's permission. He would always ask for help. He would always call me when things were out of sorts. And the sad thing was that he only started to call me when things were bad. He wouldn't call me to go shoot a game of pool or anything. It always felt like a one-way street. He had been up to, no good again, and he was suffering the consequences, and he wanted to be himself again. He told me afterwards that he liked feeling more than the normal person would, knowing things that other people didn't know. He liked being able to do things that other people couldn't do. And sometimes, I don't know if he could actually do a lot of the stuff he claimed he could do, or the stuff that he saw. There's things like hallucinations and so forth. But the things that I witnessed around him still to this day terrify me. I don't talk about it much. In fact, the only real time I've talked about it before this was when I got drunk at a party, and a lot of my friends won't talk to me anymore because I creeped them out to such a degree that I've learned to hide this. I've learned to not talk about it. And it hurts. It's terrible. It still freaks me out to this day. Where to go? So this process of him getting better and then him going back and dabbling in these things again happened more than I care to admit. I left work early sometimes. I would have to leave my house in the middle of the night. I would get in fights with my wife about still trying to help him out when he would always just screw himself up again. It was almost like a cycle of abuse where I would help him and I would suffer consequences as well. As far as some of the psychology things go, our family has a few mental mental illness problems such as depression, bipolar. It's rumored that maybe my grandfather had schizophrenia. I don't know. I don't have any proof as far as that stuff goes. I myself have dealt with depression, especially when I was a teenager, just from a lot of the stuff that happened, just mainly with the family stuff. So some of this definitely could be related to that. Also, when I talked about this in, I think it was a thread on RPG.net about the creepiest gamers you've ever been with. I talked about my brother. Some of the people discussed that there might be some sort of strange, almost twin effect, that the things that I was suffering were because I was so close with my brother, and I had lived with him for so long, and we had been in such close relation to one another. So perhaps the things that I was going through were actually me feeling what my brother was going through. And that idea in itself is a creepy one, that the things I was feeling was the same thing that my brother was feeling. I don't know if that's true. It was a theory that someone talked about, and they said that they had dealt a lot with the occult and never had any of the problems. They basically just said that my brother was crazy and that there was no supernatural element at all, which could be true. The longer I think about this, that could be true. But in my heart, in my soul, after dealing with all these problems, I am more of a believer than a skeptic. And again, these are all just my opinions. Eventually, this process went on for years, and I went away for a while, and I couldn't help him when I was at college because I was in Wisconsin and he was in Pennsylvania. But after I came back and after I got married, I just basically went out to the old routine where, he was messed up, I'd help him. One night, I don't exactly remember when it was, I got a phone call from my brother saying that he had come home from work and my father was shot. And he had basically saw some people leaving and he assumed they had broken in and shot him. So that was his story. So needless to say, I was horribly shocked and frightened and not really sure what was going on. But knowing my brother's mental state, I was actually more worried about him having seen the blood and some of the brain matter and so forth than I was about my father, which to this day is kind of like a shard of hate in my heart, but you'll understand why later. I was kind of like, hook, line, and sinker. I didn't even question. That's the story, and I'm sticking to it. Cops asked me questions. I told them exactly what he said. And their response was, he said your dad was shot. And then they marked some stuff down, and then they asked to see my cell phone and see what time he called, because he had made a 911 call. So that day, I took care of my brother. I brought him to my home. I let him sleep in my bed because he said he hadn't gotten any sleep all night. Me and my wife had stayed out on the driveway. It was actually kind of chilly for some reason that day. And I remember leaning against the cop car that just pulled up just for warmth, because I think I was dressed in like a t-shirt and shorts. And I just remember, he had his girlfriend with him at the time. I just remember worrying about my brother more than my dad. Like I told myself, there's nothing I can do for Dad. Dad's either going to live or die, because he didn't die. What happened was, in hindsight, learning more of the facts, my brother had crept up on him while he was sleeping on his stomach, put a .38 to the back of his head, and shot him behind the left ear, which is the language portion of the brain, and didn't kill him. The doctors later thought that the reason that he didn't kill him was because he used target bullets instead of more lethal rounds, because my dad just had guns for target practice for the most part. So all day, that day, after I got the call and was just horribly freaked out by it all, I took care of my brother until he had to go back to the police precinct, and I took care of his girlfriend as well. So again, I was more of the older brother protector, try to help out my brother. And I don't even know if I really felt like I didn't let myself feel like I just like steeled myself and said, someone has to be strong here, it might as well be me. So later that day, they took him into arrest. They arrested him, and they pointed out that his 911 call, as well as what he told me, um, basically showed them that he was the one that did it. The door wasn't broke in. It was, my dad always locked the door, and my brother let himself in with his key. He got the gun. He shot him. He threw the gun in the woods, and pretended like someone else had done it. Later, whenever they told me this information, I totally broke down. I started bawling and crying, and I was so angry. I don't know if I've ever felt that much anger, because I had helped him over the years, and I had suffered problems because I had helped him. And then I also thought maybe he wasn't in control. Maybe he doesn't remember that night. But then there's also the part of me that thinks, he did it to get insurance money, or he did it because him and my father had problems, just like I had had some problems with Dad, mainly verbally, verbal abuse, that sort of thing. My father couldn't talk for a while because the language portion of his brain was messed up. And my father has lived through severe calamities before and accidents. He has survived a head-on impact with an 18-wheeler. He was on a motorcycle and someone hit him head-on. 2 kids were racing down a road and they hit him head-on and he still survived. And then he was shot in the back of the head. So my father is really like unbreakable, like Bruce Willis. But he has lots of injuries and lots of problems now because of it. But he still lives on his own, and he's able to take care of himself, which is really a miracle in and of itself. The doctors don't know how he survived all these things. Later, my dad would say the reason he came back, because he's died twice, once in the motorcycle and once with a gunshot, and they brought him back with paddles. The reason he said he came back was because he had kids. And he kept thinking to himself, if I come back, I'll be able to take care of my kids. So that was there too. So all this happened. I dealt with, I guess I should talk about the supernatural things. I would have intense night terrors, normally hearing the voices of the things that I heard when I was, doing, I guess you would call them lay exorcisms, lay prayer meetings, I don't know what you would call them, where basically I would attempt to remove what I consider to be demons or dark entities from him. I don't know, maybe even spirits that he invited inside. He talked a little bit about some of the stuff he would do, but while I was curious to find out what he was into, there was a part of me that said, almost like the Call of Cthulhu thing, where if you learn some things, you can never forget them. You can never get them out of your head. So while all the books were down there that he was into, I couldn't bring myself to read through them. Just from the fear of not only seeing what they did to my brother, but the fear of I'm so similar to him, and I've always been curious about things, that I was always worried that I would go down the same path as him. So all I know is that everything that he could find under the sun is what he practiced. And probably not safely, if there is, again, such a thing. So some of the things I dealt with was what I would consider spiritual attacks. I would hear their voices. I would feel, I guess like the sleep paralysis thing that Horror Mike mentioned, where I would wake up from horrible dreams with these voices. And I always felt like they were trying to get in me. I always felt like they were trying to dissuade me from helping my brother out anymore. I always felt like they wanted me to stop because I was helping him. I was a target because I was helping him. And again, a friend of mine said, because we were so close, maybe I was feeling the same things my brother was feeling. But that almost is more creepy. Just, I know what he was feeling, And the only thing that ever worked for me, and this is, coming from my worldview, my belief system, etc., is I would say, in the name of Jesus Christ, I reject you in the name of Jesus Christ. I cast you out. I would pray, and that was the only way I was able to find to start moving again. And I would find that I couldn't even speak the words at first. I would have to say them in my mind, and then I could speak, and then it would end. So I could bring myself out of them. Because the first couple times I couldn't bring myself out of them. I would just lay there and just feel and be utterly terrified. And I'd often look over and see my wife and just hope and pray that, these things weren't happening to her as well, which was also terrifying, that something that I had done could affect her. Because I had helped my brother, she might be affected. Thankfully, at least she's never said she has been, at least by these things. So I'm grateful for that. So again, that might not be your worldview, that might not be your thing. Things like sleep paralysis, night terrors, these sorts of explanations could help. But for me, they didn't start until I started helping my brother, and then they started. And years after, even when he was in prison, I would have these horrible nightmares. I'd have, I don't know, what you would call like daymares, spiritual attacks during the day, always when I was alone. It was never when I was around other people. And I always felt that when I was alone, I was more vulnerable, that I was more of a target. I don't know. It, in some ways, it has strengthened my faith, and in other ways, it's wounded me. It has. I don't know. You would think I'd be the most pious person in the world, perhaps, after seeing these things, but while I do live a pretty conservative lifestyle, I really try to watch my decisions and the consequences of them. It's damaged me. I'm not the same person I was before I helped him. It has affected me very deeply. I don't really know. I guess I could talk a little bit about the consequences. My father is living on his own. He has lots of problems, but he's managed to survive, and the doctors really don't know why he's still alive. It's been a long time since this happened. I really don't even know the date or the year. My memory is kind of messed up now, where I don't really remember the chronological order of some of these things. For the most part, I don't remember a lot of what happened. I think that I've blocked out a lot of it, which in and of itself creeps me out. Or sometimes I'll remember and other times I won't. And I just noticed that my memory isn't as clear or as sharp as it used to be. Again, I feel damaged. I feel like I'm not the same person I was. In some ways, that's good. It's been an experience. I've grown from it. In other ways, I just feel damaged. I don't feel the same. I don't feel normal. As far as my psychological makeup, lately, just because of my situation in life, married, I have a house, things are going very good for me right now. And I don't believe I really suffer from a lot of these, like depression like I used to. I think the choices in my life, my environment has changed to such a degree that my outlook is a lot better. But I do have some dark secrets in my past. I do have things other than this that continually haunt me, and if I think about them too long, like right now, I have lots of emotions going on in my head, anger, just curiosity of exactly what happened. I'll provide some links just to kind of prove that this isn't just me talking on my ass, of things that have been in the newspaper about the situation. I know my brother has told me some things about seeing figures sitting around in a circle and talking to multiple people that he saw up in the woods. A lot of the stuff he did, my dad has 13 acres of woods, and he did this in the woods. I know he used to have a cat. He didn't have a cat after a while, so I think that was part of the process. Just some of his dabbling, some of the things he did back there. And whenever he went to prison, I just got rid of all of his books. Just got rid of them. I didn't want to deal with them anymore. I didn't want to have them there. And thankfully, my father says there has been no real like hauntings or anything like that in the house, so I'm glad. I was concerned that maybe something that my brother had done would still linger there, but it doesn't seem to be the case. For him, I think whatever he did stayed with him. Wherever he would go, whatever house he would move to, because he did move around a lot, things would follow him. He would see shadowy shapes. He would see those people he had talked to in this circle in the woods, things like that. So I guess in some sort of summation, that whole process was a various series of terrifying, frightening, disturbing events over the years. Probably the biggest scare, though, was when my brother called me and told me my father was shot. It was like someone hit me in the face with a sledgehammer. And it angers me that I didn't even doubt his words. I didn't even put together that he might have been the one that did it. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I'm gonna, I guess, stop here and put it together. It might be 2 parts. I kind of went on pretty long. We'll see. When you're making your comments, just try to understand that this is from my point of view. These are my opinions. I could be wrong about a lot of things, but I know that it's severely messed with me. Thanks.